In the late 90s, hip-hop was changing fast. The streets was talking, but now the boardrooms were listening too. Jay-Z was climbing the charts. DMX was raging out of Yonkers. The South was coming, and in the middle of it all stood Nas, the Queensbridge poet who dropped Illmatic at just 20 years old. A lyrical prophet who had already survived both acclaim and criticism. He wasn't just chasing greatness, he wanted to define it. That's when he began writing I Am, the autobiography, a double album that was supposed to tell his life story, from the womb to the tomb, a cinematic journey through pain, poverty, paranoia, and power. But what the world got wasn't the full vision. In 1999, as the internet changed everything, Nas's masterpiece leaked onto bootleg CDs and primitive file sharing sites. Entire songs vanished into the streets before they ever reached store shelves. Columbia Records panicked. The whole album was scraped. A new version was rushed, and the dream unraveled. I Am became one of the most overlooked moments in Nas's legacy, not because it wasn't great, but because the world never got to hear the real version. This is a story of ambition, disruption, and one of the greatest albums that never got fully released. This is the story of Nas's I Am. By the end of 1997, Nas had already accomplished what most rappers only dreamed of. He had given the world Illmatic, a lyrical masterpiece that captured the soul of New York City, and followed it up with It Was Written, a darker, more commercial, but equally ambitious album that sold over 2 million copies. Now he was ready to tell his story, all of it. The original idea was bold, a double album titled I Am, the autobiography. It wouldn't be a collection of songs, it would be a narrative, a cinematic arc that followed Nas from birth through the struggles of the hood into the temptations of fame and beyond. He wanted to be raw, vulnerable, and reflective, not just a rapper, a narrator of his own myth. So he started recording with legendary producers like DJ Premier, track masters, LES, and even a young Kanye West in the mix. The sessions began to take shape. Nas was recording prolifically, sometimes knocking out songs, multiple songs a night. Fetus, Belly Button Window opened the album, a surreal track wrapped from the perspective of Nas inside his mother's womb. Papa Was a Player was an unflinching portrait of his flawed father. Project Windows was social commentary laced with gospel. Undying Love was cinematic, murder, balladry. Blazer 50 was pure 90s noir storytelling. Every track had a purpose. He wasn't chasing radio, he was chasing legacy. This was going to be the defining Nas album, something greater than Illmatic in scope and more personal than It Was Written. It will blend street poetry, introspection, and narrative cohesion in a way rap albums rarely did. But all of the brilliance being captured in the booth, there was one force no one saw coming, a force that would tear the entire vision apart before it could ever reach fans' ears. In 1998, the music industry stood on the edge of a new frontier, the internet. No one was fully prepared for what was coming, not the labels, not the artists, and not even Nas himself. Somewhere during the recording of I Am, the autobiography, a devastating breach happened. The sessions were leaked. One of the first high-profile digital bootlegs in hip-hop history. Entire songs began circulating on forums, FTP servers, and burned CDs across the country. Fetus, Drunk by Myself, Blazer 50, Papa Was a Player, Hardest Thing to Do Is Stay Alive. These weren't just snippets, they were fully mastered songs ripped straight from the studio vaults. The internet was still in its infancy, but it had just delivered a haymaker to a hip-hop icon. Bootlegging had existed before, sure, but never at this speed, never at this scale, and never with this level of damage. For Nas, this was catastrophic. Over half the original double album had leaked, including the conceptual backbone, his story, his narrative, his cinematic arc. Columbia Records hit the panic button. The label couldn't justify putting out music that fans had already heard for free, so they made a call, scraped the album, compressed what was already left into a single disc LP, and quickly record new songs to fill in the missing pieces. This wasn't revision, it was triage, and the dream of I Am, the autobiography, died right there in a panic-fueled boardroom meeting. In a matter of weeks, Nas was forced back into the studio to salvage what he could. The label needed radio singles, commercial features, and new content. So instead of cinematic autobiography, we got glossy club records. Instead of legacy, we got marketing. Instead of full vision, we got fragments. For fans, the change was subtle. Many didn't know the album had leaked. But for Nas, the laws were spiritual. His most ambitious work had been stolen from him. And the version that made it to stores in April of 1999, that wasn't I Am. That was what was left. On April 6th of 1999, the world finally heard Nas' new album, but it wasn't the double LP he had envisioned. Instead, Columbia Records released a single disc version simply titled I Am. The packaging was bold. The cover showed Nas as a golden pharaoh, half man, half statue, signaling royalty, immortality, and legacy. It was a striking visual, but behind that cover was an album wrestling with identity, compromise, and industry pressure. Still, this wasn't a bad album. In fact, parts of it were excellent. Some standout tracks were New York State of Mind Part 2, a dark, cinematic sequel to a classic. Nas still razor sharp, painting paranoia with poetic precision. Hate Me Now, featuring Puff Daddy, a thunderous anthem of defiance, controversial, overproduced, and unforgettable. The video, even more iconic, so intense it sparked a real-life altercation between Nas and Diddy over an alleged crucifixion scene. Nas is like, produced by DJ Premier. This track was a masterclass in lyricism, soul loops, complex rhyme schemes, and philosophical lines. Arguably one of Nas' greatest tracks of all time, Undying Love, a cinematic revenge tale told with vivid detail and a shocking ending. One of the best storytelling tracks in Nas' entire catalog. We Will Survive, a heartfelt dedication to Tupac and Biggie, but also a warning that even the strongest legacies can be erased. But then there was filler. You Won't See Me Tonight, featuring Aaliyah, a commercial R&B cut that felt like label filler more than artistic expression. Big Things, an awkward attempt at a mainstream club record with a dated bounce beat. Dr. Not Boo, a bizarre comedic sex ed track that felt out of place and tonally inconsistent. None of these were inherently bad, but they felt like placeholders, like last-minute substitutions for what was originally supposed to be there. The reception of the album was critical. The album got mixed to positive reviews. Many praised Nas' lyrical sharpness while pointing out the album's uneven pacing and confusing tone. Some fans didn't know what was missing. Others could feel it, like something had been cut from a larger picture. Commercially, the album was a success. It debuted at #1 on the Billboard's Top 200, selling over 470,000 copies in its first week. Nas was still a top-tier artist, and to many casual fans, I Am was just another strong entry in his discography. But to the ones who paying close attention, the ones who remembered the double album promise, I Am felt like a shattered vision, a great album that had been carved out of a greater masterpiece. I Am wasn't a failure. It had flashes of Nas' brilliance, flashes that could have lit the entire genre on fire had they been fully realized. As it stood, the album was a fractured monument, a statue with cracks running through it, as the world didn't know yet that the real masterpiece was already out there, scattered into the shadows of the underground. When I Am was released in April of 1999, fans had no idea how much had been left behind. But underground heads knew. They heard the leaked tracks, they burned their own bootlegs, and they started asking questions. Where was Fetus? Where was Drunk on Myself? Where was Blazer 50? Where were the best tracks missing from the album? Over time, the myth of I Am, the autobiography, grew in dorm rooms and barbershops. Fans passed around bootleg CDs of the real album online, on forums like SOHH, OK Player, and early hip-hop message boards. They pieced together the original track list. For many, it was obvious. Nas' best music from that era never made it to retail shelves. Columbia Records had buried the songs, but Nas hadn't forgotten them. In 2002, 3 years after the I Am leaks, Nas finally responded with a quiet release that sent shockwaves through the culture. The Lost Tapes. No radio singles, no big budget rollout, just a collection of unreleased songs mostly recorded during the I Am and Nostradamus sessions that show Nas in his purest forms. No compromises, no filler, just raw poetry. Key tracks like Do Rags, a nostalgic, soulful reflection on street life, politics, and growth. Purple, vivid lyricism over a hypnotic beat, and introspective masterpiece. Papa Was a Player, produced by a young Kanye West, was Nas' reckoning with his father's infidelities. Drunk with Myself, haunting, emotional, and brutally honest. A raw look into depression and addiction. Blazer 50, cinematic storytelling about betrayal and murder, delivered like a mild film in verse. My Way, a confident, low-key anthem of independence and defiance. To many fans and critics, The Lost Tapes is one of Nas' best projects, even without a formal structure. Why? Because it captured the magic of what I Am was supposed to be. Suddenly, the leak no longer felt like a tragedy. Fans began reimagining I Am, creating DIY versions of the double album using leaked tracks, lost tapes, and studio outtakes. It became a puzzle for hip-hop scholars, a mythical project lost in the chaos of a new digital era. The tragedy of I Am gave birth to a treasure trove of music, a secret masterpiece hiding in plain sight. Without that leak, there's no lost tapes. Without the lost tapes, we might never know just how powerful that original double album could have been. Nas didn't get to drop I Am, the autobiography, but piece by piece, fans did. 1999 wasn't just another year in hip-hop, it was a seismic shift. The genre was growing faster than ever. Street rap had gone mainstream, the underground had gone digital, the regional sounds were beginning to reshape the soundscape. The entire game was evolving fast. Nas, once hailed as hip-hop savior, now stood at a crossroads. As I Am dropped, so did the realization he wasn't the only king in New York anymore. Jay-Z was in full takeover mode. Volume 2, Hard Knock Life, had dropped the year before and sold over 5 million copies. By 1999, he was preparing Volume 3, Life and Times of Sean Carter, pushing a flashier, hustler narrative, less poet, more mogul. DMX, he had kicked down the door with his Dark and Hell is Hot that dropped in 1998 and Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood. Both platinum albums in months. He brought pure energy, pain, and bark, a different kind of rawness. Biggie was gone and Pac was gone, leaving a power vacuum in the East. Everyone was jock-eyeing to be the next voice of the streets. In Detroit, a white kid named Eminem had just exploded with the Slim Shady LP backed by Dr. Dre. He was twisted, lyrical, and magnetic. Down south, Juvenile and Cash Money were redefining balance with 400 Degrees and back that ass up. No Limit Record, led by Master P, was still flooding the streets with albums every month. And in LA, while Death Row was fading, Dr. Dre was quietly building something new. 2001 was around the corner. Hip-hop in 1999 was no longer just about New York lyricism. It was about sound, spectacle, and speed. The streets still mattered, but so did radio, so did MTV, and so did marketability. And this is where Nas found himself stuck. With I Am, Nas was caught in the middle. The bootlegs forced him to choose radio-friendly songs over his deeper material. The label wanted hits, but the streets wanted bars. Some felt like he was chasing the mainstream. Others felt like he hadn't chased it hard enough. And with Jay-Z rising, comparisons were everywhere. Jay was talking about Bentleys and platinum. Nas was still rapping about betrayal, struggle, and introspection. But doing it over beats the label hoped would sell. Then came whispers. Nas fell off. Nas is inconsistent. Nas is all potential, no follow-through. This is what happens when the culture moves faster than the artist, and the industry strips an artist's vision before it's fully formed. At the time, I Am was respected, but not revered. It sold well, it charted well, but it didn't move the conversation. Jay-Z was building a brand, DMX was building a movement. Nas, he was still telling stories, but the world had started tuning into something louder, flashier, and faster. It's not that Nas didn't belong in 1999. It's that 1999 was no longer built for artists like Nas. For years, I Am sat in a strange place in Nas's catalog. Not a failure, but not quite a classic. Fans respected it, but rarely revisited it in full. Critics praised moments, but questioned the album's cohesion. And for a long time, it felt like I Am would be remembered as the one that could have been, but never was. But over time, something shifted. As the internet matured, hip-hop fans began digging. They dug into lost sessions, reconstructed original visions, and gave albums new life. And I Am, the autobiography, became a case study in what was lost and what could still be reclaimed. Bootleg forums and YouTube creators began piecing together the original album. Played in sequence, it was clear Nas hadn't missed. He had crafted a project that was haunting and cinematic. The problem wasn't the music, it was the industry, the timing, the leak, the label decisions. But the vision was always there. By the late 2010s and into the 2020s, Nas began receiving the flowers he had long been owed. Not just for the Illmatic, but for the totality of his catalog. Albums like King Disease, Magic, and Nasir reminded fans that the pen was still pulling. And they started looking back at I Am not as a disappointment, but as a fractured masterpiece. One that needed context to be fully understood. Songs like Undying Love were now studied for their cinematic detail. Nas was recognized as one of the greatest lyrical exercises ever recorded. Even Hate Me Now, once dismissed as overly commercial, was embraced as an iconic moment of defiance. Nas had never fallen off. We just hadn't been ready. In hindsight, I Am is a monument with missing pieces, a vision shattered by the internet's first wave, but one whose fragments still shine. It is Nas at a crossroads, battling industry chaos, media expectations, and his own evolving artistry. It is a story of what happens when a masterpiece is born before its time. And maybe that's the point. I Am wasn't meant to be perfect. It was meant to be human, flawed, ambitious, vulnerable, and powerful, just like Nas himself.